everyone. I'm Christine Tulley, President and Executive Writing Coach at Defend, Publish, and Lead. Welcome to episode 178, Summer Teaching and Meeting Your Writing Goals. We've had a lot of clients ask about teaching during the summer and still getting writing projects accomplished. Academics, as many of us know, tend to write more when they have breaks or summers that they can devote to it, particularly if you're at a teaching intensive use university where, maybe this semester you're just not able to pull off the bigger projects you might be able to complete during the summers or the winter breaks. And so I haven't done an episode on summer teaching, and I actually I haven't taught during the summer in quite a while because I tend to have a pretty heavy load during the academic year. However, this summer I am teaching. So I thought I might do a quick episode on how I'm going to manage my teaching responsibilities in the summer and then getting some of my writing goals accomplished. So one of the things about summer teaching, at least in the US and certainly in some of the Western European countries from what I gather, is that, a lot of times it's just compressed in the summer. So, in my case, our courses run for 6 weeks versus 16. And so what that means is I have a pretty intense engagement with students during that 6-week period of time because the course is a little bit compressed. Well, not a little bit, it's a lot compressed. I'm basically doing it in a third of the time. So that tends to be one particular issue, is that there's a lot of teaching requirements or things that have to be done to make the class go that they just can't wait. So maybe if you could put something off by a week during the semester, in this case, you might have 48 hours. So the timeline certainly makes it a little bit tougher. Other things that tend to happen in the summer, sometimes the students we have are actually different in the summer. This particular summer, I am actually teaching some high school teachers in a course. So they're teachers themselves. They're not my students that I normally have as graduate students or as undergraduate students. So this is a completely new population, and it does require me kind of thinking through how some of the material will be presented. So there will be some additional prep work that I wouldn't normally do during the year, but I know I will need to. So sometimes that's a summer challenge. I know we have lots of clients that are now working with, say, first-year students that are transitioning from high school to being fall semester freshmen at a university. That's a different population. I also have a client right now that's working with students that have failed courses and they need to repeat a writing course. So the population sometimes is a little bit different from summer courses. So in addition to the time intensity, sometimes either the students have different needs that you don't normally have to account for, or you just have to change some of the content you're already using. And of course, going along with both of those things, a 6-week course for me is not the same as a 16-week course, even if I tried to kind of take my 16-week syllabus and carve it up into 6 weeks. It just doesn't work like that. So I wanted to just say a couple of things about how I'm planning to approach that summer class and then how I'm going to work so teaching and writing both get completed. So as a quick recap, many of you are listening to the Real Life Sabbatical series, which talks about me being on sabbatical and how I'm doing the work week to week. But I know we have a little crossover for that. So suffice it to say that I'm officially on sabbatical until July 31st. This episode is being recorded at the very end of May of 2024. And so my class for my summer starts at the end of June. It's a 6-week class. It goes end of June, but as soon as it's over, I believe I have a week, I might have 10 days, and then boom, it's the fall semester. So, sometimes summer teaching, especially if you have it in the back half of the summer, can provide another kind of an issue, because you could carry out, you basically could go from starting to teach in the summer and then not doing any more writing over the summer because you're going bam into fall. And I know just from past experience that I prefer teaching later in the summer than the beginning, but one of the drawbacks to that is that I have to be very, very good with my time to make sure that I don't lose some of the other benefits of summer. So here's what this is going to look like for me. My class starts end of June. I believe it's June 24th or something like that. One of the things that I try to do with summer, I'm not always great at it, but this year I'm really committed and hopefully it'll happen. I will report back. But I'm really committed to trying to get this 6-week class built before I start the class. And that sounds obvious. And yes, I know that we should all do that. But the reality is, I might build out 2 weeks. I'll make a syllabus, build out 2 weeks, but maybe there's all those little things like, oh, I never found that one video that shows XYZ, or I never contacted that guest speaker that I want to come in and show us how to do this one thing, or I never found this reading I'm going to need in week 5. One of the things that I've committed to doing this time around is to just very slowly, as I'm doing my writing during the summer, when I have a few minutes here or there, kind of grab pieces and start putting them into the online course. We use Canvas at my university. It's all hidden from the students. I have it blocked for the moment, but I'm just dumping things in as I'm finding things. I am thinking a little bit about organization, about how I want to run this class. For some of us, we have classes that are synchronous, so we have to think about how are we going to fill meeting time, whether it's face-to-face, because a lot of times I've taught face-to-face over the summer. The classes, when I do, tend to be much longer. So for example, in a 6-week class that's face-to-face, I might have several class periods that are 4 hours in length that will need some attention, and how I'm going to tackle that. One resource I will put in our show notes for today is an article about how I manage chunking out teaching. I believe we did a podcast episode on it, but the article might explain it a little bit better. And I know that Jim Lang, one of our coaches for Defend, Publish, and Lead, also wrote about this in his latest book. So I'll make sure I put a link in there, because it's basically about how you think through using your time as a teacher in the classroom setting. So certainly that's something that I'm looking at, but I'm just trying to be a little bit very, I don't know, let's say relaxed. I'm trying to be relaxed about finding what I want to do ahead of time. So I know I don't need this class for roughly 6 weeks, but I'm trying to just give it a little teeny bit of attention every day. I'm focusing more time on writing for sure. So I'm working through some of my writing projects. You can catch episode 9 in the Real Life Sabbatical series if you want to find out more about those. But I'm using more of my work, not necessarily at work, but work time to work on that stuff. And then kind of in the little gaps or in the open moments, I'm working a little bit on the teaching, just piece by piece. So that's one of the things, just to try to get more of it ready. So by the time I really have to teach it, I have all the pieces built. So one of the ways I've tried to force myself to do that is to really think through, what does the last week of class look like? This is honestly a great technique for anybody in the, if you're making a syllabus for 16-week classes or anything else, but especially in these short week classes, I am very guilty of kind of deciding what I want to do in the last week, like halfway through the class, which then I'm spending more time on prep, more time on assignment building and all that kind of stuff while the class is actually going on. So to think more critically, thoughtfully about how I want the whole thing to look, I think this time around it will be a little bit better. So that's not necessarily a time-saving thing, but at least for me, if I'm doing it just tiny bit all through these weeks before I actually start teaching, I think I'll have it pretty well built out. Another thing that I'm doing in the summer, this is probably controversial, that's all right. I do what I do. But one of the things that I try to do in the summer class is just get really, I don't know what the word is. I guess we'll just say realistic about what can be done in 6 weeks. A 6-week class cannot possibly in any scenario cover all of the content in a 16-week class. I've tried doing that before. Students are overwhelmed. I'm policing a lot of busy work and little assignments that don't necessarily mean anything. So what I've tried to do with any class I teach that I have to condense down from a long period of time to a shorter one is I print off that 16-week syllabus. I grab a highlighter and I just say, what is absolutely essential? It's got to go in this 16-week class, and I will only let myself highlight a third of the stuff in the syllabus for the content. So readings, notes, projects, assignments, all that, because I know I only have about a third of the time. So yes, it doesn't maybe have the same coverage or depth. We could certainly debate about it. I'd love to hear responses about that, but I just have a long time ago, I have to be very clear. Now it is true, I teach writing, so I am not teaching, say, pharmacy where maybe a missed unit on something could kill somebody. I'm not doing that. So I have a little bit more leeway that other people do not have. But I have in a second option, because I did teach one class where every piece of information had to be in there. It wasn't a choice. I still had to get it in there. And so one of the things I did, which perhaps is maybe cheating a little bit, I don't know, a couple weeks before the class started, I actually let the students look at stuff ahead of time. They could start watching videos. They could start working ahead if they wanted to. Some universities allow that, some don't. I just opened my class much earlier and let the students know it was there so they could at least, even though they had to cover a ton, they had so much reading to do, so many videos to watch, I could at least say, if you don't want it to be crazy in the 6 weeks, I'm going to open it up, 10 weeks out or 4 weeks out before it starts, you'll have 10 weeks. That's something that's been pretty helpful for them and for me, because the other thing that I did was some students actually started doing the work earlier. So I was able to kind of space out how much I was doing of grading and feedback and that kind of thing. Speaking of grading in the summer, I did try the last couple times I've taught summer to think about different ways to provide feedback. Now that I podcast, I am much, much faster at audio feedback. Certainly with writing, I need to actually engage with the piece of writing and the text. So I've done annotations sometimes. I've done, Google comments where the student and I will work on something within the same, say, 2-hour period. So I'm working kind of live with them. So they're correcting things like in the moment. I probably need to do an episode on that maybe, because that's something that has been really, really helpful, because you're not meeting with the student necessarily at the exact same time, but you're just saying, hey, I'm going to be in there for the next 2 hours. If you want to be in there, you can see what I'm doing. That's been a helpful way to do it. Definitely, I will lean harder on multiple choice quizzes and things that can be graded a little bit more quickly in a 6-week time period, because one of the things that tends to happen in these classes, so for example, when I teach an introduction to gender studies, they need to know what they got on a quiz on a Monday to be able to complete an assignment on a Wednesday. And so one of the ways that I've been able to at least make that happen is do, say, a multiple choice with maybe 2 essay questions, and then the essay questions I provide more detailed feedback. Another thing about teaching in the summer that I think is helpful, beyond just kind of strategizing how you do teaching and how much you're actually going to cover so it's not crazy, but the other thing I try to do is really decide, when is it teaching time for me, or teaching prep or grading time, or worrying about this class or answering email? When is teaching time and when is writing time? And for me, I'm more of an afternoon writer. I kind of always have been, even though I force myself to write at all different times of the day, as you've heard, but I like to write, from like noon to 2:30, 3 o'clock, like that would be my sweet spot. So knowing that, maybe on some days, I'm going to make sure that I knock out some of the teaching stuff earlier in the morning and then have a nice long break, get outside, get some fresh air to kind of shift my brain over to be able to do some writing. There may be some days where I'll do some writing first, because I know that the whole rest of the day I have to devote to that class. I have to, put in, respond to student comments on discussion boards or whatever I'm doing on there. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of think through this, but I'm a big fan in general of deciding, when is it teaching time? When is it time to work on this, service project? Or when is it administration? When is it writing time? Some people are more fluid and they're able to say, okay, well, I'm going to write for a half hour and then I'm going to check a few, grade a few papers. Then I'm going to go back and write for a half hour. If that's you, that is amazing. Great. I just do better when I just sort of decide, like, okay, mornings are for teaching, afternoons are for writing, or however it works for you. Also, academic parents or anybody doing elder care, you probably have a lot of responsibilities where your time is not your own. If that's the case, you might even look at, all right, well, where are my best, child-free, times where I can be alone? That's the time you probably want to work on the writing, not on the teaching stuff, because many teaching tasks, not all of them, but many of them can be done in little increments. So if you have 15 minutes, you could grade 2 papers, you could respond to 3 discussion board posts and kind of stay on top of the work. Also on that note, one of the things I try to do in a 6-week class in the summer is to I'll just say deal with my class Monday through Friday and not deal with it on the weekends. I do try to respect summers for my students to know that, they might have summer plans, they might have other things going on. So I try to set it up that everything is due in that Monday to Wednesday timeframe with no engagement or expectation on the weekend. And that has also helped me because sometimes if I have to, I can use a Sunday to kind of get caught up on the class and get us on track so we're ready for the next week. So I hope that's helpful. If you need help with some time management or anything during the summer to try to juggle your teaching, or you even want to look ahead to fall because you're really worried about getting publication done, you can do a free half-hour consultation with us where you can just go Defend, Publish, Lead, hit the consultation button. If you're already one of our clients, you can ask one of your coaches or drop me an email. I'm happy to throw out a couple of things. Also, I know I've mentioned this before, but I want to make sure I mention our sponsor, the Textbook and Academic Authors Association. By the time this episode comes out, they will be having their conference. So if you're interested in going to their annual conference, you can go to Textbook and Academic Authors Association. I mention this all the time, but I really do support this particular organization. That's why right now they're our only podcast sponsor, because all of the materials that you get are very, very cheap. Right now, if you never join them ever, it's only $30 to get a membership for a whole year with all these free workshops and webinars and tons of resources, and they keep adding to all the resource banks. So I love that. But also the conference itself, if you're interested in checking that out, if you go to their website, you can get the details on that. But that will be happening in the month of June. So happy writing.